President Trump making some progress in the trade dispute with Communist China. The president tweeted this: "Just had a long and very good conversation with President Xi Jinping of China. We talked about many subjects with a heavy emphasis on trade. Those discussions are moving along nicely with meetings being scheduled at the G20 in Argentina. Also had good discussion on North Korea." Joining us now to assess all of this and how the president's policies are working, particularly with Communist China, Fred Fleitz, former chief of staff for the National Security Council and advisor, and incoming president and CEO of the Center for Security Policy. Great to have you with us. And Gordon Chang, author of Nuclear Showdown, North Korea Takes on the World. Gordon, great to have you here. Let me start first with Fred. And Fred, welcome back from government to the real world. Here,
good to be back
here on television. It's great to have you with us, and
thank you.
We're delighted. Let me start with the sanctions. The president announcing today a wide range of sanctions on everything from Iran to Venezuela to Cuba to Nicaragua. Assess it very quickly for us, the impact that is sought.
Well, I mean, what's going on with Iran is very important. The president is reimposing sanctions lifted by the Obama administration in January 2016, the last tranche of sanctions. But frankly, Lou, there's trouble because there's exemptions. The president wants maximum pressure, and I regret that there are people in the government, people in the swamp, who are trying to put exemptions out there. And I think that we have to have a high-level discussion in the government to say, if we're going to have maximum pressure against Iran, no exemptions.
And what about Cuba, Venezuela?
Well, wasn't that speech by John Bolton great? The Three Stooges of socialism? That's probably the first time that term has ever been used by a statesman. And
I left out Nicaragua, didn't I?
Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba. And it's to point out that these people are thugs. They're thieves. They're stealing from their countries. They're causing trouble in the hemisphere. They're causing, great pain to their populations. And this administration is not going to tolerate it. And
will there be exemptions?
There'll be no exemptions, but it's also cleaning up an Obama mess. The decision to normalize relations with Cuba was not done with the consent of the Senate. It was unilateral by President Obama. Yeah. President Trump is moving back on that.
Gordon, let's turn to China. The president, inversely now, in a trade dispute with China, with $250 billion looming in additional goods to be tariffed, Chinese exports to this country. The president and Xi Jinping had a very good conversation, it sounds like, today.
Well, there's going to be the discussions that many people thought wouldn't occur on the sidelines at the G20 in Buenos Aires next month. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if the Chinese are at the point where they're willing to make the concessions that have to be made. For instance, stop stealing our stuff. Also, stop the predatory trade practices.
That's a hell of a note that we call that a concession.
Yeah, it is. But essentially, we've got the high cards, we've got the economic leverage. And there's two other things that's important, though. You know, for the first time in decades, we got a president with the correct vision on China trade. And it looks like we've also got a president who's got the political will to use American power. Yeah. And this is important because the Chinese steal hundreds of billions of dollars of U.S. IP each year, and we can't allow that to continue.
How do you read it, Fred? With China, does this look like progress? Does it look like that finally the Chinese are going to understand they have to move to balanced trade? They have to stop stealing American intellectual property. I know it's a heck of a consolation, if you will, at least a concession on the part of the Chinese that they can't steal our stuff.
Well, look, my friend Gordon Chang has it exactly right. But let's point out, China does these things, the predatory trade practices, the theft of intellectual property, because we've let them get away with it. Yeah. Because there's no American president. Yeah, I mean, no American president was willing to stand up to them, pay the price of telling them that they simply can't do that. This president has thrown out the normal diplomatic rule book, and he's just said to a number of rogue states and states taking advantage of us, no more.
No more. And Fred's being nice. We've had cowardly leaders on the issue of China. We've had wrong-headed leaders on the issue of China. You talked about the correct vision of this president when it comes to China. Across all of the Trump doctrine and the global vision of the president and foreign policy. He is doing precisely what should have been done 30 years ago.
40 years ago, you go back to Nixon. Between Nixon and Obama, all those presidents...
I'm not going any farther back than Clinton. No, go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm kidding.
But, you know, essentially American foreign policy since 1972 has really been seen the Communist Party and its success was a goal of American foreign policy. So we really helped the Chinese in ways which were just inappropriate.
But this president standing up on these issues right now, he's done so with the outcry from the radical Dems and the left in this country and the national left-wing media initially saying he didn't know what he was doing. It was just not to be done. In point of fact, every one of his initiatives has paid dividends, has been productive and constructive for the national interest.
You know, on trade, what you're starting to see is across the political spectrum, people supporting President Trump's tariffs because they're starting to finally get it. Well, and this is the correct vision.
You know, Fred, as we wrap up here, and I'm sorry we're going to have to break, but I appreciate you being with us, you too, Gordon. And I just got to close by saying this president has spent some considerable time of his first 21 months as the leader of the free world educating the free world. And by the way, it's starting to pay off. Gordon, thanks for being with us. Fred, thank you so much. Great to have you back with us.